Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of the individuals who's responsible for some of the largest economic impact in all of this region of the country, David Delac, the CFO for the Port of Tampa Bay.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Well, you know, a lot of people don't have any idea what kind of economic impact that the port has on our region because it's kind of tucked away over in the corner.
Yeah.
And you know, we've had some new roads that lead there, and we're starting to see some changes. But it's pretty amazing to know like the logistics that actually happen down there.
It is. It's pretty amazing. This is the first job I've had in a port before throughout my career, and it's been pretty amazing to try to learn and understand. Finance is pretty easy; it's a bunch of numbers, but to understand the intricacies of what makes the port run, I think I'm learning every day more and more and more about how ports run and what makes them run. From a financial standpoint, I won't say it's easy, but it's revenue and expense, right? So
right,
that's kind of what runs it. But
and your background in finance does have some government components to it, right? I mean, this isn't your first entity that's part of a community.
No, sir. So what's nice about the job I do now is it's kind of I call it a quasi-governmental job. So there's a public and a private aspect to it.
Sure.
But yes, my background is typically in government. I started as a budget analyst with the city of Fort Myers.
Okay.
Started at the bottom. That's basically where I started. I was very fortunate to start there. It was hard. I'll be honest with you. I had 2 degrees, and I was making about $10.26 an hour. So.
Oh my goodness.
About $20,000.
Hey, but the benefits were good.
Benefits were pretty good. Yeah. Benefits were good.
Yeah.
But I mean, look back on my career, and it's been a great career. I've been able to move up and do some really pretty cool stuff as far as government's concerned, and see a lot of projects come to fruition that various governments have done that I've been able to work for. So
well, you're at the top of your game. I mean, you're in charge of your entire pyramid for your public-private organization. A lot of books have been written on how to be successful in the private world. How do you climb that ladder in the public world?
So, I think I've been very fortunate to how I've been able to, I'll say, maneuver my career. I've been a budget analyst, and I became an accountant 3. So I knew a little bit of, and really where I wanted to be when I got out of college with my master's in public administration, I really wanted to be a city manager. That's that's what I wanted to do. It brings together a lot of economics and a lot of some politics, because there's a lot of politics involved in these various jobs. Even as a finance director, there's a lot of politics sometimes involved, and not necessarily at the port here, but in several other jobs I've had. You direct report to commissioners, and it's
political officers.
It can get political, yeah. It can. Most of the time it's a hire fire type position. However, there are always politics involved. So, but as far as moving up through my career, I've been very fortunate that I've had a great family who's been able to move. I mean, I've had to move sometimes. For 4 jobs, I moved to Galveston County, Texas, from Atlanta, and I moved to Tampa from Galveston. So the greatest part, though, for me about Tampa is, and this is just a small thing, but my wife's family lives in Orlando, and my mom lives in Sarasota. So I kind of call it the triangle. We kind of have that triangle set up so that we're close to our family when we need to be. So, when I got requested, it was on LinkedIn that a recruiter asked me if I would be interested in being hired for this job, and I was like, sure. And so it just started the ball rolling, and just kind of within several weeks I was interviewing, and then within a couple of weeks after that I was offered the job. So
how long ago was that?
I started here October in 2019, just before the pandemic hit. So,
and in at show prep, I was looking through news-related items for the port, and one of the things was an award for excellence for financial accuracy and transparency for excellence. How do you get that award?
So it's through the Government Finance Officers Association. It's a national organization called GFOA, and it's typically what governments like to attain as far as their financial statements are concerned. They're obviously audited by outside agencies, so we don't audit our own books. We prepare everything, and then we work with the auditors to make sure that we've expensed everything properly, and that we've also recognized all the revenue properly as well. So, and there's a lot of notes that go into it. Obviously, GFOA and GASB, which is our Governmental Accounting Standards Board, they've come out with several pronouncements, and I think they're up to in the 90s now. So back when I was at City Fort Myers, they were only on 34. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot of changes to how, because they're really trying to make the financial statements look more like a private organization.
Sure.
We'll always be government, and I don't think that's a bad thing from a taxpayer's point of view. I think it shows the fact that the government's doing the correct way of accounting and spending the money, and I think taxpayers can feel comfortable with that. It's also good for our bonds, our bond ratings. They really look at that. If we ever go out for a bond, which we haven't in the last couple of years, but if we ever go out for a bond, it's good for our interest, our interest rates. So, I mean, it's very advantageous to the port to have that certification, and I think this is our 21st year of actually attaining that.
Wow.
I've done that in several other entities that I've been in. So, yeah, it's a big deal. I don't think it gets sometimes the recognition that it deserves, but that's okay. I'm a support service anyway. So
I don't remember the last time Detroit won that award.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm not sure.
Or Chicago.
I'm not sure. I don't know, man. Yeah. They may have. I just don't know. I'm sure.
Well, I think it is significant, to talk about what makes our region so great. I mean, you've got such a huge impact. There's so much revenue generation that comes through having a port, and our port is the biggest in terms of land, right?
Yes, it's the largest land port in the state of Florida. It's got 5,000 acres. So
that's a lot of acres.
It's a lot of acres. It's a lot of acres, and it's a very diversified port. Also, we're very fortunate that we don't just do one aspect of business. So we don't just do cruise.
Right.
We don't just do bulk. We do real estate. So we have, leases that we do with companies as well. And I think that's really what helped us during the pandemic. Obviously,
because the factories that are located at the port still had to do factory things, even if boats weren't coming
fuel
and going as much.
Still had to come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though there was a less demand on fuel at the time, fuel was still coming in. It was down. Obviously, it was down. But, yeah, we were very fortunate that we were able to maintain, and everybody obviously did a great job of watching the expense. And then we actually got a new business during the pandemic as well. So we got a lumber company come in from, I think it was in Europe somewhere. So we signed a new company, and obviously that wasn't my doing. I was working on business development, and those things take several years to come to fruition. Mm-hmm. However, it just so happened that during the pandemic we were able to sign up a new company. So the port's doing really well.
And there are a lot of great jobs at the port too. I mean, I've heard one of my neighbors, I was living in this apartment complex north of Tampa years and years and years ago. I was in my mid-20s. And I remember hearing about someone who worked in an engine room on one of those boats, that transatlantic type of freighters, and he would report to work in Africa. So he'd have to get on a plane, he'd go to Africa, and he'd get down in the belly of this thing, and he'd work basically 15-hour days. Wow. And it was a lot of work. And he said it was really hard, but he'd only worked for about 4 months a year. Mm-hmm. and he was making $150,000 to $200,000 a year. And I'm just thinking, here I was, somebody, you know, like working my ass off to make 60 or something like that. And this guy was getting 8 months off and getting paid quadruple what I was making. I was like, holy smokes. And I had no idea there was so much money in that. And I mean, you've got the captains, you've got these pilot guys that we see all the time. There's a lot of money in working for in the maritime jobs, right?
There is a lot of money in the maritime jobs, yes, sir. Yep, there is. What's kind of neat about it is the breadth of the jobs that are available. Well, whether because we do have some ship repair businesses, so there's welding, obviously, and there's all kinds of tugboats, and there's a lot of moving parts.
That's
when
Tampa
it comes.
ship, right? Like that. Believe when you drive past on the connector, the crosstown connector, and you look over to the right, they'll have an entire boat up out of the water on this dry dock. And they'll be working on it. It's incredible to see. If you're any kid who ever played with Tonka trucks,
right?
You know, I mean, it is like
it's pretty amazing.
So neat to look at.
What's even more amazing is to see those ships actually come into that dry dock, and just the way that the tugboats move.
Yeah,
and push that and push this, and it's really pretty cool to watch it actually happen. Because I'm fortunate where my office is. I can kind of see out and just over Terminal 6, and it's kind of cool to see especially when there's a cruise ship. But it's pretty cool to see when they are moving boats in and out of those dry docks and stuff. So
for someone who's learning about, like for example, I was having a conversation with my son the other morning, and he was like, "Dad, where do you even go to school to learn how to work in shipping?" And I said, "Well, there's maritime academies, and there are not a lot of them."
No, there aren't. I think I only know of two, and I think I know one is in Galveston, Texas, and I believe the other one's in New York. I think we do some stuff with the one in New York. But yeah, there's not a lot of places. I think on the welding side, I think you can go to Hillsborough Community College or some of those other colleges and learn a skill that then you can be hired at. So yeah, it's pretty amazing all the jobs that are available that kids can get involved in. So,
well, I think it's so cool because it's such an important part of the economy in general. A lot of people are hearing about supply chain getting backed up, and it seems like our port, we really haven't heard a lot of consternation around any of that. How did you guys keep it going?
So we've been very fortunate. I think back today at lunch, I had a lady ask me if we picked up any of the ships from Longboat or Long Beach, pardon me. Really, we haven't. I think a lot of those ships then go through Houston, which is a little bit more central. I think we're looking more long term than we are short term. Obviously, we would had helped anybody that would have needed any sort of help, but I think business development's really trying to gear toward a more long term relationship. That's what it's all about, right? Partnerships, relationships,
Absolutely.
Trying to, just tell the story about Tampa and how we can help. And, off the I-4 corridor, there's, I think, just over 300 distribution centers.
Yeah, there's a ton now.
And so, if you think about tractor trailers running from the port to a distribution center, right, they can make that trip more than one time a day. Whereas if you're coming from somewhere else, perhaps you may only be able to make one trip. So it's.
Well, I think Florida, we're now the third largest state. Is that correct? We just passed New York.
Did we? Okay.
Yes, I think it's Texas, California, Florida. I think that's where we're at. And you would kind of wonder, it's like we're way down here on this peninsula. Why would you put a distribution center halfway down the peninsula of Florida? But there's so many people here, it makes sense.
I can't get over the number of people that are moving to Florida. It's amazing. And I think I was at lunch also, and this guy was talking about Pods, the company, and he was talking about the different places that Pods were moving in and out of. I think he said number one was Sarasota, which was a little bit surprising. It could have been a percentage type thing, but Tampa was third or fourth, and Nashville was on that list. So, I mean, two places in Florida is a pretty big deal. So it's going to be. I mean, we're all feeling it, right?
Yeah, housing, especially if you have a house.
Driving, and it's amazing though. I think it's a great time to be in Tampa. So
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, one of the things that, you know, if you've ever been fishing in Tampa Bay and you see one of these big boats come in, it can kind of shock you a little bit because there's these smaller boats that pull alongside the big boats, and you're just like, oh my God, why is that guy getting so close? And if you look closely, you'll see a guy come out of the small boat and then come up the side of the boat, just like that movie Captain Phillips. Yep. And if you've never seen it before, it's just like, holy smokes, like what are they even doing? Yeah. What is that all about?
So what happens is when a container ship or even a cruise ship gets into our channel, one of the boat pilots actually is taken out to the boat, and then they basically jump on a ladder, they go up, and they actually navigate the boat into the port. So it's not really the captain of the ship, it's more the boat pilot who does that to navigate through our channels and those type of things, because they are very aware of the port channel.
So they can drive any of those big boats, and they know how to steer it and help it make those exact turns that we need for our port. And from what I understand, that's a very well-paying job.
Yes, sir. It takes a while to get there, but yes, sir, it's a very well-paying job. So you can make up to, from what I've understood, about $500,000.
Goodness gracious.
Mm-hmm. Now that's typically you're seasoned, right? So you're not just out of school making that kind of money, but you're over probably a 30-year career, you're making some significant amount of money doing that. And there's a lot of.
So if I didn't want to be a professional athlete, I could be a pilot?
Sure, why not?
Oh my goodness.
There's a lot of schooling involved. Obviously, you know how that goes, but you know, you don't just one day wake up and go, "Hey, I want to be a boat pilot," and you just jump on a boat and you do it. So there's a lot of schooling involved in it, but from what I understand, it's pretty cool. It's really cool. And there's other type jobs. You can run tugboats and you can run other things, but yeah, I mean, if you really want to be a boat pilot, you can do it.
That's wild. That is a really cool thing. And then when you talk about our port, right? I mean, you have the main port, the port of Tampa Bay, and then you have a number of other smaller ports around our area, right?
I think there's 15 ports in the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Port Manatee, which is just up the road from us.
And that's in Tampa Bay. There's another port in Tampa Bay, the old port, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you've got the port of Tampa Bay, which is where you work.
And then you've got MacDill too. So.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
I didn't know big boats could pull up there.
I think they're the military, obviously military vessels. Mm-hmm. And I only know that because I know actually someone who was on one of the ships that went out of the MacDill Air Force Base. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things, if you've been paying attention to the skyline of Tampa, you see that it looks like all of a sudden where there never used to be, we've got two of these giant cranes that are down there now. And that's a really big deal, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, those cranes have really helped, obviously, be able to take those containers off of the ships. Sometimes, I think we had some smaller ones, and this was all pre me, but from what I understand, yes, sir, those are new cranes. What was it, they're probably 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, they just move over and they just reach over and grab it. And the reason that they're so big is because they can reach out further. Because the container ships are that much bigger.
The cantilever arm of the thing.
There you go.
Right. So then that thing reaches out and it grabs and it can unload those containers really, really quickly. And so
it can actually put it onto a chassis of an 18-wheeler if there's one sitting there, or they can move it somewhere else. And yeah,
that's very efficient. Mm-hmm. And then obviously we know that we just had a major amount of construction downtown and just to east and southeast of downtown, where we've got all these brand new roads that are swooping over and around to deliver those 18-wheelers directly into the port.
Yeah, that was I can't remember how long ago that happened, but yeah, there's a direct, it's like a truck truck highway basically, so that obviously the folks that are the rest of us who are commuting in don't have to deal with the trucks, but then they have a direct access right to the port. Yeah, so they can get in and out pretty efficiently. Yeah, from what I understood, I think I heard this, there's one traffic light if you wanted to get on I-75 between here and like Michigan. It's one traffic light.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And obviously That's what I heard. I can't remember. No, I'm pretty sure that's accurate, but I'm sure there'll be some fact checkers out there.
Well, you can. I mean, you get right on the ramp. Right as soon as you leave the port, and then you're on the highway. And so once you're on the interstate, you're just rolling.
Right.
So then, tell me a little bit about the business of what the port does. So what is your day-to-day and the other leadership within the port actually? What do their days look like?
So I'll give you my day. My day is typically a lot of phone calls, trying to coordinate. I coordinate with my staff pretty much all day. I'm also talking to other directors and just seeing what's going on, making sure that that they have the tools they need to do their jobs, whether it be operations, security, IT. We have a really good support system as far as IT, HR, legal, and finance. It's a pretty good support system. And then we've got engineering, right, they're the ones trying to get these projects moving and going and designing and permitting. And
so if the port needs a new seawall, we're talking to engineering.
Yes, sir. Yep, we're talking to engineering. And operations, we're just making sure that all of the operations are moving along. We got security. We've got real estate, right, that are dealing with a lot of contracts and submerged land. And so, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on. So really my day is, I'm just coordinating, making sure that my staff, number one, is doing well, right? Especially now because we're at month end and we're trying to get the financials ready for Friday. That's kind of the deadline that they have, is to get everything done by Friday. But just making sure we got all our accruals in and we've got all the information, as far as our revenue, our ships in from operations, because that's a big deal too. Making sure we got all our expenses in. And yeah, I mean, this is a busy time of the month for us, the first couple of weeks, because we have a board meeting the third Tuesday of the month. So I'm getting ready to brief commissioners and make sure that everybody, knows what's going on and why things are happening the way they are. So yeah, it's a really, like I said, my day is just a lot of phone calls and coordination and just making sure things are going smoothly. So
how does the business of the port actually happen? Do the boats that are coming in, are they paying some kind of a fee?
So there's a wharfage and dockage that each boat has. Typically, those are done by contract, and every contract can be different. So for you to ask me exactly what those are. We also have a tariff that the state, obviously, that we work through. But yeah, for the most part, we have some contracts that we work through with, whether it be the cruise ships or other boats, yeah.
So if I'm buying some raw materials of some kind and I want them shipped here, how do I get that done?
So I wish I could tell you exactly how that happens. I know there's an agent involved who works with the shipping company, and that's kind of how that happens, all behind the scenes stuff. So I wish I could tell you more.
But the Port of Tampa itself, you guys, like you said, there's real estate. I mean, you've got a massive amount of land. So you're also leasing land to these factories and whatnot.
Yes.
And there's an incredible amount of diversity that's down there. Like I saw that one of the factories down there is producing, I think, 1.5 million pounds of flour a day or something.
That's Ardent Mills, yeah.
Yeah.
Ardent Mills moved from downtown onto the port, yeah. So they're up and running. They're operational. So yeah, they're doing really well. I think we also have some private companies out there as well. So that we work with to, provide everything. I think fertilizer and Tico's out there, so electric.
Yeah, obviously our region is known for the phosphate, that would go into fertilizer. We've got huge companies like Mosaic that are located here. You've got a tremendous amount of gasoline that comes from Houston. There's those giant grain silos. Do they even use those anymore?
I think they do. I think at one time they were operational. I don't know exactly how operational they are today, but yeah, I think those were. It's pretty cool to watch that stuff come off those ships too and get pushed into those silos. It's really cool to see it all happen. So
it's wild because those ships are so huge.
Yeah,
it's like watching mountains move.
Yeah,
and then the way that they're able to just move them around so exactly.
It's like moving mountains, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the preciseness that they have of getting those ships into the berth and getting them out of berth, and it's pretty amazing just to watch a ship move.
Well, you mentioned the long-term view. What are some of the plans for our port?
So we have a lot. We have a lot going on. We're trying to extend berths. We're trying just so we can get more
Bigger ships
in.
Mm-hmm.
Cranes is on the list. I don't exactly know when that's going to happen, but cranes are on the list. We're trying to develop some land. We're trying to build some refrigerated. I want to make sure I use the right terminology, but it's like a refrigerated building or a temperature controlled, climate controlled building. I think we're going to build some roads or a road in there. So yeah, we're just trying to make it a lot bigger and a lot better, and then we're trying to just attract businesses into the port. So and just make sure that they can move their product as quickly as possible, because really that's what it's about, right? It's about money, being efficient, making sure that they're as efficient as possible, right? Because we want them to be profitable. So just like they do.
Well, sometimes if you're like on St. Pete Beach and it's a clear day, sometimes you can see the boats parked offshore. What is happening? What is that all about?
Is it a cruise ship or a container ship?
No, they look like container ships, and it looks like just even fishing around some of them during COVID, and maybe it was just a COVID thing. But I noticed that some of those boats were parked out there for a few days. What is happening when those boats are out there?
So I remember cruise ships doing that. They're leaving the port, and then they're just anchoring off the. So all I remember was it was cruise ships. I don't remember that it was any of the, and it could very well have been. I unfortunately don't live. I don't get to see that.
Just curious. We can edit that out.
Yeah, it's fine.
But anyhow, I was just curious what was going on out there.
Yeah. I think really, if we're going to edit it out, I think it really came down to dollars and cents. So the cruise ships were out there, so they didn't have to pay wharfage, dockage, and water. So that's kind of the.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, they were good to fish around.
Yeah, right. I mean,
they were attracting a lot of bait fish.
Right.
I saw one guy catch 2 sailfish out by that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
And which is not a common fish. All right, let's get back into it.
Okay.
So then you've got some major infrastructure plans coming up with more cranes, more logistics, more development of the land. I mean, there's obviously a ton of, if you've ever been down that side of town, there is a lot of area. I know myself, there are distribution hubs for example, Carrier Enterprise, one of our clients, has a big distribution facility down there. But it does seem like it's going to be very, very important for the development of our region.
It is. I don't think people realize how important the port is from an economic driver standpoint. It's a fascinating, that's where a lot of people, we get furniture from the port. Sometimes you get food and produce from the port. I don't think people realize when they're in grocery stores or they're in furniture stores or they're in any other kind of store, really how much most of that stuff comes off of the ships through Port Tampa Bay. I do know that 43% of the fuel that comes into Port Tampa Bay is for the state of Florida. So 43% of the state gets their fuel from Port Tampa Bay.
So there's a 43% chance when you're putting gas in your car, it came through that port.
Yep. And we have a really, I don't know if you've been over there to watch those fuel trucks come through in and out, but they are just, it's like clockwork. They just get there, they hook up, they get gas, boom, they're gone. It's amazing to watch how it works. I think we take a lot of things for granted when we go to the grocery store, the furniture store, gas, convenience stores and get gas and stuff. I don't think we realize how important the port is. So it's fun. It's really a fun job. I'm having a blast at it,
It does seem like a cool job to be able to look out your window and see giant ships moving around right in front of you.
Yeah, I always joke with people that if I'm there right at 4:00 or so, that when I hear those ships leave, it's the sound of money.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to hear those horns go off just because, it means they're leaving. And obviously people are going on vacation and they're ready to have a good time. So it's definitely fun to watch the people, the ones that come off the ship, right? They're kind of downtrodden, and the ones that are getting on the ship, they're like super excited. So it's kind of fun.
Well, I think everybody's smiling because, I mean, even the rest of your facilities down there, you can park right next to the boat. The processing for the cruise is super efficient. And just in general, like it's so neat. When I first moved to town, I lived on Harbor Island. It was an apartment complex. You can't find an apartment complex there but this was 20 years ago. And I just remember looking over there going, man, look at all of that industry. That is so cool.
And the other part of it that we emphasize too is just the environmental side. I don't know if you know, but just a couple of weeks ago, we had a second annual, Port Tampa cleanup, So we're really making sure that we do what's good environmentally for the port, as well as, that we maintain the financial side.
What are they called, like propeller heads or something, or?
No, I don't know about that. But I mean, when I had a lady on the finance team. She was our captain, our site captain, and we probably had
the Propeller Club.
The Propeller Club, yeah.
Yes.
So yes, the Propeller Club with the port did it, but we had a bunch of sponsors too, and I don't exactly know how many people we had, but I think we had over 400 people just go to different areas of the port and just do a bunch of cleanup. And I don't even know the number of tons that we picked up, but just in the area we were just in a little small mangrove area, and it was amazing to see the bottles and just everything that the mangroves were like trying to filter out, right, from going back into the water. We picked up a lot of stuff.
Well, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of access to that part of the bay, just downtown Tampa, and you really don't see a lot of trash floating around down there. You don't. Seems pretty clean.
No, you don't. But we had like I said, we did it for a couple hours on a Friday.
Thanks to you guys is my point.
Yeah, well, we could have been out there a month and done a heck of a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fun. I mean, I did it last year. I did it this year. I just think it's important to be involved in not just the office aspect of it. That's like not as much fun for me, but I really like getting out and seeing what's going on in the port, and even just picking up trash, for a couple hours a day. It's just, that day was really fun. And I think it was Earth Day too. I think that's why we
there
did it.
you go.
Yeah, so it was Earth Day, and so the CEO was out there, the chairman of the board was out there. We had a good time. It was really a fun time of camaraderie. You know what I mean? And you got to pick up trash and just.
Well, speaking of trash in a port, and I don't. This is kind of a surprise question. And it doesn't have to do with you, but about a month ago, I was riding on the highway and I looked over and there's this giant cloud like rising up over the south end of Tampa Bay, and what we were told is that there was a scrapyard at Port Manatee that caught fire. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. I know that we have a scrapyard too.
Mm-hmm.
The port does, and I've heard that happening before. But yeah, that happens. That scrapyards just self-combust, I guess, and it's it's kind of crazy. That's why I think they're constantly watering those or making sure that there's some type of water on there as they're
really.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that was happening, and then obviously there's the incredibly tragic story of the fertilizer, the ammonia nitrate that was stored in the one port. I'm trying to think where it was, somewhere over in the Middle East, where that was set off. A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It was like one of the largest explosions in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Do we have anything being stored over in Port of Tampa
that
right now?
I don't know. I do not know the answer. I do not know the answer to that question. I want to make sure.
Well, I talked to the lady who was in charge of keeping track of the ammonium nitrate for Mosaic, and she said that we don't have anything like that. So that's good.
And like I said, we're trying to do everything we can environmentally to be a good steward of the environment, right? I mean, that's important too. As we dredge, we have like spoil islands where birds can then nest, and so it's kind of a cyclical environmental aspect of it. So we're very conscientious of that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, those spoil islands, they are. If you drive by there, I love boating, and I've done a lot of boating in Tampa Bay, but you will see some birds that you see on the Discovery Channel out there, and a lot of times they've got signs posted that says, keep off the island. And I mean, we've got a huge population of frigate birds now that live here in the Tampa Bay area, which are pretty exotic. They're these, these big black birds with like a red gullet, and they're flying and they're looking for bait fish. If you're ever out there fishing, you want to look for the frigate birds because they're usually hovering above like bait balls, which is where the good fish are. Very like good. Underneath. Very good. But anyhow, that is very, very cool. The limiting factors on our port. So are there any limiting factors in terms of the size of the ships or any of that was
so the bridge, obviously, the Sunshine Skyway is probably the only prohibition we have as far as getting larger cruise ships, but we're okay with that. I mean, we don't need to have the largest cruise ships, in our port. I don't think that's I think if they wanted to come, great, and if they don't, I think we're happy with what we're able to get through our cruise, through working with the cruise lines, obviously. But yeah, that is our limit.
There are only certain ports that even those cruise ships can pull up to.
Yeah, they're all on the East Coast, I believe.
Well, I mean, even for destinations. I mean, if you're trying to go somewhere exotic, they might not even have a place to park a boat like that. Right. So I think Royal Caribbean's famous for having the biggest, giant, most massive floating cities that are out there, right? The Oasis line or whatever. Yeah. And I think there's only a couple places in the Caribbean that those boats can even go to. Right.
And some of them, like I went on one cruise and they had to anchor out and then they
ferry in.
Ferry you in. So some of those
it's never as convenient as just pulling up to the dock and lowering the bridge down, right?
Right.
But that's really, really cool. So where can we find out what's going on in the port?
You can go to the website. Port. It's if you search Port Tampa Bay, I think it's porttb.com. You can go there, and obviously there's a lot of stuff on that website. It'll show you the economic impacts. It'll show you the cruise, show you where to park for a cruise. I mean, there's a lot going on downtown, obviously, with the aquarium next door, and then
great place to go.
Yeah, great place to go. Sparkman's Wharf is closed. Obviously, the Lightning is fun to go.
The one boat down there, the Victory, is that what it is?
Victory ship.
Yeah, the Victory ship.
That's a really cool thing to go see too, as well. There's a lot of stuff going on down on Channel Side. It's really fun. Even where there is some construction down there right now, but I think that's just to make everything a little bit more efficient. And so it's almost over, I hope.
Yeah, we all hope. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's been great learning about the Port of Tampa Bay and the business you guys do there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have fun.
Well, we'll follow you guys on that website, and you can follow us anywhere where podcasts are found across all of our social media, Bake More Pies social media, the Law of Relevancy social media, and we'll see you again.